A poem by Rumi. A poem by Rumi entitled Not Here. There's courage involved if you want to become truth. There is broken, open places in a lover. Where are those qualities of bravery and sharp compassion in this group? What's the use of old and frozen thought? I want a howling hurt. This is not a treasury where gold is stored. This is for copper. We alchemists look for talent that can heat up and change. Lukewarm won't do. Half-hearted holding back, well enough getting by. Not here. This is the Coleman Barks translation of the 13th century poet Rumi. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Wynne Lewis. I'm rector of Christ and St. Luke's Episcopal Church, and it is my honor to welcome you here tonight to the Rumi Forum for Interfaith Dialogue and the 2011 Recognition Dinner. In the spirit of Rumi, we honor three persons of courage whose bravery and sharp compassion have heated up and changed the alchemy of society. These are men of justice, compassion, and truth. Half-hearted holding back and well enough getting by are not in the lexicon of their lives. Such men express the very core values of the Rumi Forum and its honorary president, Fethullah Gulen. Be so accepting, he says, that your heart becomes wide like the ocean, becomes inspired by faith and love for others. Offer a hand to those in need and be concerned about everyone. And here we gather this evening to celebrate a safe space for respectful conversation, friendship across differences of culture and experience, and the joy of learning new pathways to the sacred center, which we all share at the core of our being, that sacred center at the core of all life. Before we begin our meal together, I would like to call upon and introduce Rabbi Roz Mandelberg, a woman of vision, boundless energy, and passion for this mission of the Rumi Forum, a woman of light and life whom I'm honored to count as a friend.
Dear friends, as we gather tonight for the 2011 Rumi Forum Recognition Dinner, we take a moment to remind ourselves why we are all here. We pray. God, we thank you for the Rumi Forum and all of its devotees whose sole purpose is to promote peace in the world and to contribute to the peaceful coexistence of the adherents of all faiths, cultures, ethnicities, and races. Through mutual respect, education, and dialogue, our friends at the Rumi Forum have brought us all together to transform hate by fostering love, to promote understanding by preventing misinterpretation, and above all, to overcome bigotry by teaching tolerance. We ask your blessings, God, on all of us gathered here, and especially on the three men being honored tonight for their life's work in fostering peace amongst all peoples, the Honorable Robert G. Doumar, Robert Collier Nusbaum, and Bishop Emeritus Walter F. Sullivan. May they have the health, strength, and vigor to continue to personify the message of the 13th century Sufi philosopher poet Rumi. Reaching out in understanding, empathy, and faith, Rumi embraced all humanity with his singular vision, which we strive to carry on today. Come, whoever you are, come, that we might welcome you in the spirit of fellowship, tolerance, and peace. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi. As always, that was beautiful and brought us into this sacred place. Before we eat, it is my privilege to introduce the president of the Rumi Forum, also a man of great vision and wisdom, who seems to be able to be everywhere. He is astonishing, and it has been such a joy to get to know him and a privilege. Mr. Emre Çelik.
I think I need to pay our MC for those words. Very kind of you. As the song goes, yes, I've been everywhere, man. A few days ago, I had the opportunity of being in Delaware, and the night before that, I was in Florida. So it is my esteemed pleasure to be amongst fellow travelers on the path of Rumi, on the path to dialogue. And I had a similar comment. I'm going to base my remarks upon a comment I had at the Delaware dinner, and also now at the Norfolk dinner. Somebody turned to me at Delaware and said, "This is so beautiful. You people of Turkish American backgrounds are bringing together people of different backgrounds." And he completed his compliments with these words: "It's too good to be true." And I had similar remarks this evening. And I recalled the story of a science fiction story that I very much liked when I was younger, about aliens that came to Earth and they served mankind, because as the Rumi Forum, we are about serving our fellow human being, to encouraging that service, to serving mankind. So these aliens, they produce wonderful technology, they produce produce, they got rid of the droughts, everything became as utopian as we would want. Of course, there were cynics, or people that didn't know, thinking this is too good to be true, this is too good to be true. One of them, I think it was a journalist, a researcher, went out of his way, learnt the cryptic language, went to decipher some of their works. Of course, in the meantime, these aliens were always touting their book. This is the book we follow to serve mankind. It was titled To Serve Mankind. This is the book we follow. We need to serve mankind. So this individual, the cynics, the greatest cynics amongst them, who discovered what the language was, who researched it, became fluent in it, started reading this book, To Serve Mankind, To Serve Mankind. Eventually, he came to the conclusion the book was a cookbook. So they meant what they wanted to do was to serve mankind, except it was to serve on a platter. We don't have ulterior motives. We are not here to cook or eat you. But we may be alien, we may be unknown. But the whole point of these types of dinners and these types of gatherings and conversations and conferences and seminars and every single small effort towards understanding our fellow human being, irrespective of their faith, color, race, tradition, philosophy, or outlook on life, is to contribute to a better community, a better society, and ultimately a better humanity. And I thank each and every one of you for supporting these efforts. I congratulate the award recipients, and I thank my colleagues, and in particular the advisory board, who have put in a great deal of effort for this evening. And I look forward to continuing the dialogue. Have a very wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. And now we will eat.
Not each other. Not each other, please.
But we will not each other. While you are enjoying some dessert and coffee, I hate to interrupt this wonderful conversation. I'm hearing bits and pieces of it around the room and participated in this wonderful experience of getting to know one another and talking and renewing old friendships and making new friendships. We're going to move on with our agenda, but feel free to enjoy your dessert, your coffee. If you need to get up and use a restroom or you just want to walk around, please feel utterly at home here. We want to introduce the Rumi Forum to many of you who may not know much about its background. And so we're going to present a short video on the Rumi Forum and a bit of its history. And then we're going to present our speaker and then present the awards. So I'm going to turn it over. Do we have the video ready? Yes, it's coming up. For those of you who are being introduced to the Rumi Forum this evening, I hope that provided a little bit of background material for you. I have known Roberta Rosenberg for 5 hours. And I already know that she is a friend of the soul. You just know that when you meet someone like that. I asked her what her passion is, and she thought about it for a moment, and she said, reverence for social justice as it is seen in literature. She said that storytelling is a way that can open people's minds and hearts so that they can understand the other. And adding my own interpretation of that, refrain from falling into the kind of cultural, experiential, theological, political gated communities that we're finding ourselves increasingly moving toward. She sees that storytelling is a way to develop a sensitivity to the cultures and struggles of those who are other than ourselves. And she said, I write books and articles, but I feel that people need to work in the world. And so I'm the director of a minor in civic engagement to help young people connect what they learn in the books, in the classroom, with how they might make a difference in the world. And so it's very appropriate that she is the keynote speaker this evening, because she is shaping the minds and the hearts of the future in a way that helps our young people see how they can be people who build friendship, understanding, peace, and the joy of discovery across traditional divides. And so it is my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Roberta Rosenberg, Professor of English at Christopher Newport University, originally from New York, with a bachelor's from Queens College and a PhD from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, but more importantly, someone who shares a vision that I think all of us here in this room can feel a deep passion and engagement. Dr. Roberta Rosenberg.
Thank you so much, and I value our long-standing friendship as well. I'd also very much like to thank you for inviting me. I feel humbled in front of such an august group. What I'm going to talk about tonight, and I was talking about this with other people, and I thought this might be appropriate for the time that we are right now. My talk is called The Meaning of Friendship During Troubled Times. because I do feel this is a difficult period in the state of the world, and yet we need friendship more than ever. When I was asked to speak on the subject of friendship and solidarity, my first response was to think about the word friend in our modern world. Much to my distress as an English professor, friend, a once proud noun, has now become the renegade verb to friend. At least for the millions of young people who live online through Facebook. People now friend each other. But the Facebook friend is also a troubling as a noun. What does it mean in a modern context, I thought, to have 650 friends on Facebook? What can one do with 650 friends? Indeed, what does it mean to be a friend to the other 649? And yet many modern philosophers would argue that today, with dissolving kinship ties and families scattered throughout the world, friends are more important than ever as our non-biological alliances replace the traditional family. But what do we know about the concept of friendship when we can't even decide whether it is a noun or a verb? When sharing with friends means exchanging our likes and dislikes with corporations that are phishing our Facebook page in order to sell us something, how can one find solidarity with friends such as these? As I usually do in situations like this, I decided to look back through history in order to understand how we have arrived at this perplexing juncture. And on the way, I also learned something not only about modern friendship, but also something about the reasons why we are honoring the three people who either sit here with us or one who couldn't be here with us this evening. All of these gentlemen understand what it means to be a true friend. And all three have had the courage to enact the quality of friendship during both good times, but more importantly, during dangerous and troubled times. It is this quality of friendship that we need now more than ever. And I'd like to share with you tonight my journey in thinking about this as an issue. In his famous treatise on ethics, Aristotle describes three kinds of friends and makes important distinctions among them. According to Aristotle, friendship can be based on pleasure, on utility, or on virtue, or shared commitment to the good. The first two kinds of friends would be, pleasure and utility. But they can be really fleeting, since they are often prompted by self-interest and transient emotions. For instance, we are friends because we like to ski together, or we're infatuated with each other, or financially benefit from the alliance. Once I no longer desire to ski, once the romantic thrill is gone, or the deal is completed, however, our friendship may wane. Networking, as it is now called in our cyber age, whether in person or online, does not really constitute friendship. Change my job, my hobby, or passion, and the friendship may evaporate. Profile deleted. But Aristotle's third definition of friendship, based on a shared commitment to the good, is the kind of friendship that all our honorees know intimately. And it is this kind of what Aristotle calls the friendship of virtue that we need more than ever in a modern world that the Irish poet William Butler Yeats once described as a place that, quote, where the best lack all conviction while the worst are filled with passionate intensity. Let me explain what I mean by a friendship based on virtue or commitment to the good, because it describes the actions of Judge Doumar, Bishop Sullivan, and Mr. Nusbaum. In this sort of friendship, one must be committed to civic virtue, often at a great professional and personal cost. And it needs to be for the benefit of society. These three men have all devoted themselves to selfless actions, which include the important traits of empathy, caring, and concern for the less fortunate. Ironically, as virtuous friends, they were even willing to make adversaries of an erring society. As the French philosopher Montaigne argued, quote, "Those who venture to criticize us perform a remarkable act of friendship. For to undertake to wound or offend a man for his own good is to have a healthy love for him." It is within this kind of friendship that people do not necessarily ask, "Are we having fun yet?" Nor do they speculate, "What am I getting out of this?" Instead, friends of virtue forge courageously ahead, often braving adversity and danger in order to accomplish what they feel is their responsibility to a just society. Likewise, Fethullah Gulen, the inspiring leader and intellectual, praises those friends who act responsibly in the world. Gulen writes in The Statue of Our Souls that the courageous friend will say, "I have to do this myself. If I do not do it now, to whatever extent I can, then probably no one will do it. And they will run forward to be the first to do it, to bear the flag high." Our three honorees, all in their individual ways, held the flag high and continue to, running forward into controversy when they needed to act as the good friend to an errant society. Our honorees have become what Gulen calls, and this is a quote of his, "genius minds with iron wills." Because, as Gulen explains, we need refined minds and an iron will which will embrace and interpret creation in its depth and entirety and humanity. To illustrate, even in an anxious post-9/11 world with its war on terrorism, Judge Doumar felt that American citizens should have due process, and in his legal decision, which would eventually go to the Supreme Court as Hamdi v. Rumsfeld, Judge Doumar supported the rights of Mr. Hamdi, an individual named as an enemy combatant. In addition, Judge Doumar worked tirelessly in many lawsuits on equally controversial cases, including the government of Sudan's complicity with the bombing of the USS Cole. Not positions that people felt comfortable with or supportive, but and a very hard fight. Likewise, Bishop Sullivan spent 10 years as the president of Pax Christi, the National Catholic Peace Movement, and has been a supporter of alternatives to the death penalty, for which he was honored by Virginians for alternatives to the death penalty. Never one to shrink from controversy when he believed that issues of social justice were at stake, Bishop Sullivan is an example of a true friend to Virginia and people everywhere. Furthermore, Bishop Sullivan's commitment extends to women and men of all religions. His experience at a World War II death camp in Poland had a galvanizing effect on him. After viewing the camp, Bishop Sullivan remarked that, quote, "These things become a part of your psyche and convictions of what you should be about." No stranger to controversy, our third honoree, Mr. Robert Nusbaum, has been described by Howard Gordon, a partner in his law firm, as unwavering when confronted by social justice. As one of Fethullah Gulen's genius minds with an iron will, when Mr. Nusbaum takes a position or gets involved in something, he is, in the words of Mr. Gordon, in it all the way. When some Norfolk public schools closed in the 1950s rather than admit black students, Mr. Nusbaum raised money for the legal representation of black families who wished to reopen the schools. With his leadership, businessmen across the region paid for newspaper ads, demanding an end to massive resistance to integration and the opening of the schools to all children. He said, massive resistance was just plain wrong, Nusbaum told a reporter of the Virginia Pilot recently. I did what I could. Like all of our honorees, Mr. Nusbaum had a special commitment to religious freedom, a belief which prompted him to work for the establishment of a Center for the Study of Religious Freedom at Virginia Wesleyan. All three of our honorees demonstrate how true friendship acts in the world. It is unafraid of controversy, courageously working for the public good, and founded on the commitment to social justice for all people. This friendship requires us to work in solidarity together, despite our cultural, social, or religious differences, even at great personal, financial, or political risk. And this notion takes me back to my opening comments about Facebook and modern friendship. I must now confess that I have a Facebook page. And I am in possession of 116 friends. And although I seem critical of the concept, I would like to explain how I got started. Several years ago, I was asked by my university to be one of the faculty advisors for a U.S. State Department project that paired 20 students from Morocco and Algeria with 20 Christopher Newport undergraduates for a month-long experiment in cross-cultural friendship on our campus. This post-9/11 experiment was a success. It was a great success. And the bonds of relationship forged in the summer of 2006 have continued until this day. At the conclusion of the summer, the North African students asked me to create a Facebook page where they could check in with me online. One student in particular, Khawla, who adopted me, she said, as her American mom, has been a faithful Facebook friend to me. So when I was fortunate enough to be sailing in the Mediterranean last December, I was able to stop in Casablanca and renew my friendship with Khawla, Kaja, and several other students after a 5-year absence. Khawla's family invited me to dinner, and when we arrived, we were welcomed as friends by her large and hospitable family. We didn't have a mutual language, nor did we share the same religion or nationality. But we had what good friends must have in our world, a commitment to international understanding and justice. And as we left the dinner and returned to the ship, my husband Terry said to me, "You know, no one but Khawla spoke English, but it didn't seem to matter." And he was absolutely correct. We all had a desire to connect in a meaningful way, transcending linguistic and cultural differences and distances in order to arrive at a place of friendship. The true basis of friendship transcends nation, religion, and economic circumstances. It is a meeting of people whose ultimate goal is the creation of a peaceful and just society. American author Henry David Thoreau said it quite well over 150 years ago when he analyzed the importance of a virtuous friend. He said, "The language of friendship is not words, but meanings. It is an intelligence above language. And it is to that intelligence above language that we and our honorees tonight are dedicated." The poet and philosopher Rumi also speaks eloquently about friendship, and thus I would like to conclude my remarks by reading a few lines from his poem, The Community of Spirit. He says, "There is a community of spirit. Join it and feel the delight of walking in the noisy street and being the noise. Drink all your passion, close both eyes to see with the other eye. May we all continue to see the community of spirit through the other eye of virtuous friendship. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rosenberg. If you'll come forward, we have a gift for you of thanks.
You can see I scurried right back to my place.
I feel like I've known you all my life. But that's what happens in the Rumi Forum. We truly find people we feel that we have known all of our life. We're now moving to the heart of our evening, and that is the presentation of the awards to these three inspiring and courageous men. The first award is being presented to the Honorable Robert G. Doumar, Senior Judge, United States District Court. And this is the Public Service Award, recognizing leaders in justice and equality. And he is going to be introduced by his old friend in law, Mr. Jerrold Jerry Weinberg.
I promise you this will not be as serious as Dr. Rosenberg's talk. It's an honor and a pleasure to introduce Judge Doumar. He, for many years, has been known, just reflected in the glory of a prominent family, best known for ice cream cones. But he has still had a wonderful career. And I'm not going to give you all the facts. There's been too many accomplishments, too many awards to even go through, but I will try to just hit a few highlights. Judge Doumar was born in Norfolk and has lived here his whole life when he wasn't in either Charlottesville or Korea mostly. And he was a star in school. He went through the parochial schools in Norfolk, was valedictorian of his class at Holy Trinity High School. He finished in 1947. He received his bachelor's degree at the University of Virginia. From 1950 to 53, he was in law school at the University of Virginia. His academic career there lit up the sky. He wasn't just a brilliant academic record, he was on the law review. He was in the moot court competition. He went to the nationals. He finished fourth in a distinguished law school class that finished in 1953. He could have had any job in America that was offered to a young lawyer. Instead, he then had to go in the Army. He served as a first lieutenant in Korea. He came back and he went into private practice. The highlight of his life, well, he started a law firm. It went on for some years, Doumar, Pincus, Knight, and Harlan. And Mr. Pincus and Mr. Knight are here tonight. He finally outdid himself. He's always been an overstriver. And the real home run that he hit was when he married Dot. Then that got even better. They have 2 children that are off the charts. And they have 6 grandchildren. They don't even look like grandchildren. They look like Central Casting sent them over. His law firm, he was there for about 25 years. Every honor that you could think of came to him. He was president of the Norfolk Portsmouth Bar Association, and it's a small world. He succeeded Bob Nusbaum. He was president of the Virginia Conference of Local Bar Associations. He was a member of the Virginia State Bar Council. And he wrote the charter and founded the Tidewater Legal Aid Society. That was back at a time when it wasn't a given that services would be provided except on an individual basis, legal services for people who could not afford lawyers. Of course, they couldn't have afforded lawyer Nusbaum's fees, so there was a huge need for this. And that Tidewater Legal Aid Society still exists today. He not only organized it, he wrote the original charter for it. He was its president for the first 2 years, and he continued to serve it thereafter. His law firm grew and grew. He got involved in so many activities I can't even begin to mention. But one that was interesting, this is all, you get all this off the, Google it, get their iPad out. He went to 3 different Republican national conventions where he met a fellow named Ronald Reagan. Then his accomplishments and his background were so outstanding as a trial lawyer that he was appointed by Ronald Reagan to be United States District Judge in 1981. It's just a coincidence that Senator John Warner, who recommended him, was his classmate at Charlottesville. But he deserved it anyway. Among his other honors, he received the Brotherhood Award of the National Conference of Christian and Jews in 1982. In 1985, he received the Outstanding Citizen Award of the Knights of Columbus Council. In 1996, he took what's known as senior status, which means he doesn't have to go to work, but he goes there every day anyway. It's a labor of love. You might understand that under our Constitution, his salary can never be cut. And he goes to work because it's a labor of love. He wants to do justice. He wants to do the right thing. He wants to see that the right guy wins the law case and the bad guy loses it. His outstanding thing was referred to by Dr. Rosenberg, for which he became famous. I was impressed when I see his name in a New York Times editorial. He had this Hamdi case. Hamdi was, I don't want to repeat what's already gone into, but Hamdi was born in the United States, which made him an American citizen. He lived all his life in Saudi Arabia. He was captured with a gun in Afghanistan in the early days, shortly after the 9/11 bombings. And his father filed a petition. The government's holding this guy incommunicado and doesn't let anybody see him, and a lawyer should be allowed to see him. The government's position was he was an enemy combatant and he didn't get a lawyer. Judge Doumar, really with enormous courage, ruled that the government, not only did he have an absolute right to a lawyer, but that the government had to provide evidence as to why they were holding him in detention. The case was controversial, but as a previous speaker mentioned, it was affirmed finally by the U.S. Supreme Court. Judge Doumar was right, of course. At least I think he was, and so did the Supreme Court, so that's easy. The high note that I would like to end this on, I once heard a speaker say, I'm not a coloratura soprano, but I still like to end on a high note, would be with this quote of what Judge Doumar wrote in the Hamdi case. We must protect the freedoms of even those who hate us, and that we may find objectionable. If we fail in this task, we become victims of the precedents we create. We must preserve the rights afforded to us by our Constitution and laws, for without them, we return to the chaos of the rule of men and not of laws. It is my pleasure to give you Judge Doumar.
It's kind of my friend Jerry Weinberg. I never thought I'd hear and witness my own eulogy. In fact, I don't think I should be receiving this recognition. My wife and companion, Dorothy, has advised and guided me over the last 50 years, and she should be the recipient because her advice has always been good. I don't always follow her advice. For example, when I became a judge, she had a plaque made for my bench which said, pray for divine guidance and keep your mouth shut. I've been praying ever since, but was never able to keep my mouth shut. In all seriousness, I thank you for this honor, wherein I feel that I am in outstanding company with those who are much more deserving than I am. I want to thank my friends for coming, for without good friends, one can achieve very little. And I'm lucky and humbled by this honor, and I thank you all.
Judge Doumar, it was a real honor and privilege. And thank you for all that you've done for our city and our country. It is my pleasure now to move to the second award, and this is awarded to Robert Collier Nusbaum, and it is the Community Service Award. He is being introduced by the Reverend Dr. Paul Rasor, Director of the Center of Religious Freedom at Virginia Wesleyan College.
Thank you all. Just my great honor and pleasure to present the 2011 Rumi Community Service Award to Robert Collier Nusbaum. I cannot think of a more deserving recipient of this award. You'll notice in the program that they've given me a little extra time. Yes. But, you know, it would take an hour to really talk about all of the things that Bob Nusbaum has achieved in his career. I'll try to resist. But I will say that Bob was one of the first people I met when I came to Norfolk about 7 years ago to interview for the job I now have. And it didn't take long before I realized that here was a man with big ideas and a deep commitment to seeing them through. Most of you know that his list of contributions to community service is far too long to even name them, much less try to describe them, and I'm sure there are plenty I don't even know about. But I do want to mention some of the high points just to give you a sense of how remarkable his career has been and how deeply deserving he is of this award. And I think that Bob's public service grows out of his professional achievements as an attorney. So we begin with his life in the law. He received his law degree from the University of Virginia Law School in 1948. I was 2 years old. Hadn't met him yet. But he's been a practicing attorney in Norfolk for 63 years since then, and he is still going strong. I think if we could choose one word to describe Bob's legal career, the word would be excellence. It's profound excellence. And just, I'm going to mention just a couple of the long list of awards and recognitions because I can't resist. I mean, they're just too good. Not too good to be true, but nevertheless remarkable. Bob has been listed in the best lawyers in America for a quarter century. And even more remarkable, he is one of a very small handful of attorneys who are recognized as best lawyers in 5 or more categories of the law. That's an astonishing thing. He's regularly named as super lawyer by the Virginia Super Lawyers magazine, and earlier this year, the Norfolk and Portsmouth Bar Association gave him their highest honor, which is basically for a lifetime achievement to someone who has epitomized the highest standards of personal and professional quality, reputation, and conduct throughout their career, and that describes Bob. But his penchant for public service extends to his legal profession, and he's been involved in any number of professional associations and committees. And I think I'm going to pass over all of those and move on to the community service, though, because that's why we're here. Bob's achievements in community service come out of a devotion to community service, out of a lifelong commitment, and I think that's what we really want to recognize tonight. Bob has served on the boards of an astonishing range of civic organizations, nearly always in leadership roles, in fact, most often as president or chair, and not just in rotation, well, maybe in a couple of cases, but for extended periods. And here's just a partial list. Most of you are familiar with this, but some of you probably aren't. The Virginia Commission on Women and Minorities in the Law, the Eastern Virginia Medical School, the Diabetes Institute Foundation, Centera Health System and its predecessors, the Tidewater chapter of the American Red Cross, Planned Parenthood of Southeast Virginia, the Norfolk Forum, the Norfolk Symphony Orchestra, the Virginia Foundation for the Humanities and Public Policy, the Norfolk Public Library, the Library of Virginia, Ohef Shalom Congregation, and Virginia Wesleyan College. Just a partial list. But for me, the most remarkable thing about Bob's public service is its profound humanity and its rich creativity. Bob doesn't just serve on boards, he moves institutions in new directions. When he sees problems that need attention or injustices that need to be righted, he acts. And he not only attends to the most immediate short-term needs, he helps establish institutional structures that can sustain the necessary work over the long haul. And I want to just name 3 examples, a couple of which have been referred to already this evening, but they're worth repeating. As was mentioned, in the late 1950s and into the 1960s, Bob publicly fought against the shameful, massive resistance to integration of the Norfolk public schools. For the short term, he helped raise money to hire lawyers for the black school children and their families, and he organized business and community support for reopening the schools. And for the long term, he founded a program called the Aid Fund, which provided scholarships to African American students struggling against racial discrimination in Virginia's colleges and universities. In the 1980s, Bob responded creatively to the controversy surrounding the new in vitro fertilization program at EVMS. For the short term, he founded a group known as Virginians Organized for Informed Community Expression, or VOICE, to promote public education about this program. For the long term, he helped establish the Jones Institute for Reproductive Medicine Foundation and served for many years as chairman of its board. And finally, Bob was the driving force behind the creation of the Center for the Study of Religious Freedom at Virginia Wesleyan College. Bob first proposed this idea in a letter to college president Billy Greer in November of 1995, a letter I have. Won't read it. But it's worth noting that in less than a year, the center was a reality. I learned tonight that the idea might have been conceived on a beach in Mexico, and I want to learn more about that story. But it was expressed eloquently in this letter and persuaded President Greer, who I think didn't really take much persuading, but to create the institutional structures to see it through. So I can truly say that without Bob Nusbaum's vision and his dedication, I would not have the job I have today. So I want to close on a personal note just by saying publicly, thank you, Bob, for the way you model what being a good community citizen means, for your ongoing support for the center, and for your kind and wise counsel, and yes, for your friendship. So it's with great pleasure that I now introduce and present the 2000 Rumi Forum Community Service Award to Robert Nusbaum, super attorney and citizen extraordinaire.
My first question is how long I have for a rebuttal.
When the red light comes on.
Well, I think the note hit by the professor about friendship is the key to why we're here. It's certainly the key to why I'm here. I've been privileged to have the friendship of some wonderful people in my life, and I'd like to pay tribute to some of them, lest this credit all seem to belong to me, because I think your friends have a lot to do with who you are. And one of my good friends is Billy Greer, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, the president of Virginia Wesleyan College. And I can assure you that without his enthusiasm and tremendous ability, there wouldn't be any Center for the Study of Religious Freedom for Paul or me to be proud of. But he's a great guy, and he deserves a lot of credit for my association with that enterprise. And I even still have the note he wrote me January 10, 1996, saying, "Bob, I love a bold idea. Thanks for the idea," and so forth and so on. That's the kind of guy he is. I also am very proud to be associated in this evening with Bishop Sullivan. I feel so bad that he can't be here because of weather concerns and problems in Richmond, where he found himself earlier today. But I'm happy to say I brought a picture to show him of Bishop Sullivan and me in Richmond about 8 or 9 years ago at a similar event where he was being honored by the Council for America's First Freedom. That is the Jefferson Statute for Religious Freedom. I want to say that another person, two other people I'd like to thank for their friendship. One of them is the Reverend Bob Alley, who passed away a year or two ago, a very distinguished Richmond professor and man of the cloth, who has stood for religious freedom in Virginia as much as any other individual, and influenced me greatly in the idea that came to me for the organizing the Center for the Study of Religious Freedom. I attended a lecture by Bob Alley out at the Virginia Beach Public Library shortly before this idea came to me, and it was based on what he had to say on that occasion. So he's a friend that we're all indebted to. He's the author of many books on religious liberty, and he would be honored here today if he were living. The other friend is my mentor for most of my professional life, and he's not with us. His lovely daughter is, Ms. Weinberg, sitting here. Ruth is the daughter of my mentor and late beloved partner, Alan Hofheimer. And it's his ideals and his sense of justice that has guided me for whatever I have done in the field of law and community service. And I'm very grateful for his friendship, and will always honor that as one of the great things that's happened to me in my life. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, thank you so much for all you've done for our community. We are all partaking of the fruit of your labor and your passion. Thank you. Finally, we're going to award the Educational Service Award, and as Mr. Nusbaum mentioned, unfortunately, Bishop Sullivan cannot be here this evening because of weather concerns, but to receive the award in his place is the Reverend Father James Parke, who has recently retired, and I told him that a clergy retirement is a lie. But if you will come forward, Father Jim. And Imam Farid is going to be here to give the award.
Well, first of all, I am honored to be able to speak about a bishop who has certainly made a difference in my life, but I think in the life of Richmond and of this area. I don't know how you really talk about Bishop Sullivan, but except that, as we gather tonight, it's amazing how God works in surprising ways. And he seems to raise up people and individuals, okay, who themselves have been shaped by a lot of factors, including good friends, but somehow or other have made a difference. I would say 5 years ago, most of us never heard of Rumi, forum. And yet there was a group of these people from Turkey, pretty much down here in around ODU, and they gathered there, who began to introduce to us what it meant to be in true fellowship with one another and people of different faith who believe in that one saving God of all. And again, I think we're very grateful for a group that calls us together tonight. And I think Walter Sullivan would say these words. He's grateful for what Rumi has been and will continue to be, and how it's made a difference in our lives and hearts. And one of the things that I think that's marked Walter Sullivan's life is what marks Rumi, is gathering us at table. Have you ever experienced any kind of inhospitality from Turkish people? You have not. Okay, when they tell you they're coming to provide a meal, don't you dare bring anything, all right? They do everything. And so we're grateful for that hospitality like this evening. I want to share with you that, first of all, I have to say something about Facebook. By the way, Facebook also realizes that 165 or 1,000 friends are too much, so they've identified now you can cluster them in smaller groups. Have you noticed that? Okay, but I also had the experience to be in Cairo this past week. And our guide took us on a tour of the square where much of the revolt. And without Twitter and Facebook, that revolution would not have taken place. And our prayer is that the elections in Egypt on the 28th of this month will continue to lead them to a sense of freedom that they think they have not experienced for centuries. And so to keep them in prayer too, because that will have an impact on the whole world, that type of thing. So I'm grateful for that. But I want to use that sense of hospitality because Walter Sullivan was much like the prophet Jesus. He always intended to invite the wrong people to table, okay, as people looked on. Walter Sullivan always invited everyone to be at table with him. And that was so much of his ministry, wherever he was. I don't think we identified Walter Sullivan with a mitre and in clerical robes very much. He was where he made you feel at home. He always didn't remember names, but he always said, "Oh, hello, friend." We always used to kid him about that. Everybody was a friend to Bishop Sullivan. He continued to share that same vision, but also he realized that to allow that to become an opportunity for people, he had to fight against many of the realities in the world in which we lived. And so again, he was a priest of justice. And he realized that peace does not come without justice. And he took some strong stance, even by people of the Catholic faith. He was the one who spoke out against nuclear arms here in Virginia Beach. He did not win the great support of the military community initially, all right? But gradually, they began to sense the need for us to disarm from nuclear weapons. Over and over again, he spoke of that. He was one of the in his first role as a bishop and at the cathedral was to go out and help the church become an integrated church. He probably says some of the things that we did back in those days to help it. He might have done it differently, but one of the things he did was to prevent people from rushing to make white schools only in Virginia Beach. So Catholic schools could not accept people who lived, except they lived in that area, to prevent the idea of people running away from the need for integration. But over and over again, we sensed that he was a man that spoke of hope and of peace. He created, because of his own friendships with so many of the Jewish faith, so many of the rabbis, particularly in Richmond, he got to know so well, that the cathedral in Richmond is the only place where there's a dedication to the Shoah, there at the Holocaust, with a statue of Rachel mourning for her children. Over and over again, he reached out because, again, he kept inviting people to table. When this diocese was formed or reformed in 1974, and that's when he became the ordinary or the full bishop of Richmond. They cut off Arlington, but all of a sudden the diocese had stopped at Salem. All of a sudden that whole area that used to belong to Wheeling Charleston became ours. One of the first things he did was to realize the plight of the poor in Appalachia. Together he organized all the bishops of that whole area of Appalachia and wrote that beautiful pastoral letter, "This land is home to me." It was reviewed again in 25 years later. So again, reaching out, he simply made a difference. I would say that even though he studied law, by the way, canon law, he did have his, I would not say that he was going to be in heaven because of his adherence to canon law. All right, because he reached beyond to reach out, and he meant that he went beyond to call people to the kingdom. And the kingdom is a journey of freedom, and it's going to take us and stretch us in new ways. He would be the first one to say, though, that he didn't do that alone. Again, it was good friends he met along the way. At the same time, he was not always understood. I want to share something interesting. When he retired, in 2003, as he had to do when he turned 75, ordinarily they name an administrator for the diocese then. Okay, ordinarily that would be a priest in the diocese then, would become the administrator. Well, two ways to look at this. In one way, Walter had made such a difference here, they made Cardinal Keeler of Baltimore, the head of the province, the new administrator for us. It was also Rome trying to smack his hand, but that's another issue. Okay, but he didn't care, but he made a difference. And so, again, I think what he's done educationally has to set us on a journey that says, if we don't do it together and break down the barriers that keep us apart, we'll never become the really people of God. And so I think he's very grateful for this award, and he would love to be here. And there's no way that we could capture all that he's done, from poor, the aged, the retirement homes, the campus ministries, the ways that he's touched all of our lives. And so I think I want to say tonight, thank you, Walter Francis Sullivan. Amen.
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 I don't need to talk. You make my job very easy. It gives me great pleasure to present this award to Bishop Sullivan, to Father Parke on behalf of Bishop Sullivan. And you make my job very easy tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll let you keep this till then because I'll break it. Okay. You got it. Thank you.
This has been a fabulous evening because all of my heroes are here and being awarded. And Jim, please express to Bishop Sullivan our sadness he couldn't be with us, but our affection, our admiration, and our love.
And he also would offer congratulations to Judge Doumar, whom he knows so well, and certainly to Reverend Nusbaum. So he would say thank you to them as well.
Thank you very much. And I don't know why you all are talking about Facebook. I have 700 deep, intimate friends with whom I communicate every day. I want to introduce now, to close our evening, one of the great spiritual leaders and teachers of our area, Rabbi Michael Panitz of Temple Israel on Granby Street. This summer, I invited Rabbi Panitz to preach at Christ and St. Luke's Episcopal Church. And I'm never going to invite him to come again because the next Saturday, a number of my parishioners showed up at his temple. And they told me they were glad that that it was probably good I wasn't leaving anytime soon because Rabbi Panitz would be my successor. And soon after that, we had an earthquake and one of our spires fell, but that's another story. But what a fitting person to end our evening, another person for whom I have, and we all have, great affection and admiration, Rabbi Panitz. And thank you all for being here. What we've experienced tonight is community, and it's friendship, and it's a passion for justice and making this world a better place. And in that we all share, and we all experience here and in the Rumi Forum what true community, which we all yearn for, can be like. Thank you.
When what you didn't tell our friends is that you let me ring the bell afterwards, which was a great experience. It was literally uplifting. In view of the amazing juxtaposition of legal and religious acumen that characterizes tonight, I'd like to share a thought with you as a prelude to the benediction. I did not write this. Supreme Court Justice Robert Jackson wrote these words in conjunction with his opinion, his majority opinion, in the case of Barnett versus Board of Education. I'll do without it, all right?
Yeah.
Listen, you know, I didn't say Hainsworth or Carswell. I said Jackson. In 1940, the Supreme Court issued a ruling that it then regretted. In 1940, in the case of Gobitis versus Board of Education, the Supreme Court ruled that young Jehovah's Witness children who believed sincerely, as a matter of their religious conscience, that they could not, in good religious conscience, salute the flag of the United States of America because in their religious opinion, that was violating the prohibition against idolatry. And the Supreme Court ruled that they were wrong and that the school board was right, and the school board had the right to expel them from school. And it did so, unleashing a terrible wave of anti-religious bigotry in the United States for the next 2.5 years. Jehovah's Witnesses were beaten up in the street. Kingdom halls were burned to the ground. And within not much time, the Supreme Court, a majority of Supreme Court justices, let it be known that they would welcome the opportunity to revisit such a case. And that was the case of Barnett. And Justice Jackson wrote the following. He said, "Compulsory unanimity is the unanimity of the graveyard." And he said, "If there is one fixed star in our constitutional constellation, it is that no elected official, high or petty, shall decree what is orthodox in religion or in politics." The words of Justice Jackson. Friends, we've gathered here this evening to celebrate the unity that does not come from censorship, the unity that does not come from the stifling of different opinions, the unity that does not come from a betrayal of diversity, but rather from a celebration of diversity. That is the work of the Rumi Forum, for which we are very grateful. And so with that in mind, I'd like to offer these few words of closing benediction. Our Father in heaven, place it in our hearts that we may recognize the divine image found in the heart of every human being. May you guard our going out and our coming in unto life and unto peace. Amen.
Amen. And please be safe going home. Blessings.